Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Stefan.
Do you ever listen to our podcast back sometimes, and whenever someone mentions your name, you kind of like prick up and get into a bit of a panic because I feel like you've just asked me a question?
No.
No.
When I listen to the podcast back, which isn't some weird narcissism thing, it's just to check that we haven't mentioned anything incriminating and that I can't be tied back into any local disappearances. But sometimes when I listen to it back, and then like one of you guys yells my name, like it freaks me out because I feel like you're asking me a question.
And here's Michael.
And we are
Animating in
threes.
MacGyver.
We are a podcast that tries to analyze animation, but we have gotten so desperate to analyze a superhero thing, Michael has picked a topic that is Superman.
My slow plan to to gradually turn this into a comic book podcast is almost complete.
But before we get into that, we'll be talking about Toons we've tuned into. That's the new
I wasn't
segment
made aware
name.
of this change.
No, it's the
He
exact...
was saving it.
I just wanted to see your reaction.
Tunes we've tuned in tune.
Kind of hard to say.
Rolls off the tongue.
I like it.
It rolls off the tongue like a freeway pile-up.
Should we keep that name or not?
I'm keeping this in the edit, so...
Okay.
Sure.
So, Stefan, what have you been watching?
No, I want to start with Michael. I think he's got something good to say.
Okay, Michael, what have you been watching?
Well, the twos of Toot.
I'm sorry, Ben. That name is just going to be hard to say.
That's why I say it, so you guys don't have to.
No, I did listen back to our podcast. Does that count?
No. That's listening,
It's not even
watching.
an animation.
I just... I don't... I feel like me listening to it just automatically doubles the viewership count. I'm pretty sure the only rating we have on that is a 5-star one I accidentally gave it when trying to exit the app.
Hey, that 5 stars goes a long way, so thank you. What about you, Stefan? Have you been watching anything? I know you have, actually.
Yes. Well, first off, I finished the season finale, series finale of Star vs. the Forces of Evil.
The podcast won't feel right without you mentioning this every week.
I won't be able to mention it anymore because now it's finished.
I mean, you still can mention it if you want.
Oh yeah, sure. Watch it again.
No, I will hit you if you mention it.
No, it is an absolutely spectacular finish. I really loved it. I'm on the same boat as a lot of people in which I liked the ending. I really loved how they dealt with Marco and Star's main character arcs. But there's a lot of things they left untied up, like a lot of loose ends. And main being there's two really big things that are like game-changing that they just leave as like, oh, that's just the state of everything now. And it's kind of a bit disappointing that they didn't evolve that idea further, but I can understand what the idea they really wanted to try and get across. Either way, it was absolutely spectacular finish. I love the entire series, and I absolutely recommend it. It's great. But the other thing I saw was the third How to Train Your Dragon.
Oh, okay. Is it good?
Oh, have you guys seen it? I don't
No.
know.
No, I saw the first one and just was surprised that a kid lost his foot. Well, that was a ballsy move for an animated show.
No, the third one, I really loved the first and second ones. I feel like the third one has some really great moments. Gorgeous animation, of course. It's absolutely phenomenal. Set pieces are great. But I feel as if it's falling into the trend that a lot of modern like animation trilogies are doing, where
Hardcore
they just...
nudity?
No. Why would
What
that be?
trilogy has hardcore nudity that's animated?
No, it's like, because they don't really have a plan when they make sequels as much, like they kind of just make it to either make profits or just because they want to, they don't have a plan for who should be in the third film. Like this one, the third film should really be your climax if you're making it a trilogy. This never felt like it was a big finish. Like it kind of just did a more reflective, like, oh, and this is how it ends.
Well, maybe it's not a trilogy and maybe they're going to do more. We don't know.
Maybe, but they did say that this was meant to be the final one of this thing. And it
George Lucas said that about Star Wars. Now we've got 5 more.
Oh, that's understandable. But still, I think it does some really great things visually, but there's things story-wise that I think could have been taken to that next level in terms of storytelling.
Okay.
What about you, Ben? Have you been watching anything?
So, we got our first comment on YouTube, so hooray for us! And
Hooray.
it was by someone named Mel Sanchez, and they recommended Villainous, a Cartoon Network web series.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a Mexican web series made by Alan Ituriel, I think. I hope that's how you pronounce it.
I never heard of it.
Yeah, neither have I. So I went to look. I went to watch a few episodes. There's only a few in English that I could find, but from what I watched, they're like 1 minute shorts, and it's just this evil villain and his minions and lackeys and all that trying to sell these evil things to make profit,
Okay.
and it usually just goes disastrously wrong.
Okay.
It's
the
pretty fun. I would
Maybe
actually,
we'll watch some during the week and we'll do a segment next week.
I would love for them to have a proper series of this because I think it would be really good. Because like the animation's really good, the music is spectacular, and yeah, the visuals are like it's really defined
Okay.
and it really knows what it is. So if they actually did a proper series for this, I would definitely watch it.
All right.
Maybe they're trying to use it to test the waters online before they pitch it as a full series, maybe.
Maybe.
So thank you, Mel Sanchez. You should probably delete that comment before your employer finds out.
No, but thank you. And if anyone else is listening to this and wants to suggest something, go ahead and do that, please. And
We could just mock us relentlessly.
I also watched the show opening for a new Disney show called Amphibians. Amphibia, sorry. So it's basically this girl she finds this frog world, basically, and she goes on adventures with frogs.
She tries to get back home, but she's stuck in this, like, other world, basically.
Yeah, so Stefan's watched this intro, and I thought it was really well animated. It's, like, kind of similar to the Gravity Falls style, I would say.
Oh, I like that style.
Even the theme song has the same whistle ending and everything.
But yeah, it looks really good, and the creator of this show, his name is...
Mel
Matt-
Sanchez.
His name is Matt Braley, and he worked on Gravity Falls Season 2 a lot.
Oh,
so
cool.
he did some storyboarding for quite a
sorry.
few episodes, and he directed 8 episodes, including the sock opera one,
I do like the sock opera one.
Northwest Mansion Mystery,
Oh, that's my favorite episode.
The Last Mabelcorn,
That's cool.
and Weird Mageddon 2.
Oh my goodness.
So he's a really great director, because all of those are some of my favorite episodes as well. So I have a lot of faith in this new show that he's making.
And even that opening has a very good display of what the show is capable of. Simply just with how the animation, how the characters interact and their gestures and whatnot. It also
Exactly.
looks so colourful.
It does. And like, there's parts where she's hopping across the mushrooms and they glow up and everything. And it's very visually interesting.
Look, after Gravity Falls and Star Versus, my respect for Disney shows has like gone up. Like I would eat anything they give at me at the moment in terms of them. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Cool. And now Michael will present the topic.
Oh no.
You don't have to if you don't want to. We could
just end the podcast and I can go home.
It's
No.
a very short podcast this week.
Alright, so you'll see that I have 2 sets of notes, my digital notes and my printed notes.
They're not even printed. He hand wrote them.
There's only like 3 lines on that paper.
There's 3 lines of a piece of crumpled, like, lined paper. I'm also writing off these notes as a business expense. Because this is the first bit of money I've put into the podcast.
Apart from the microphone.
Apart from the mic, I did pay $30 for the microphone.
I literally thought you were going to say $30 for the piece of paper.
Oh no, but I will be listing it as a $30 business expense.
We don't even have an ABN or anything.
We're not even technically a business.
Alright, so today I chose to do the Max Fleischer Superman serials, mainly because it is one of the first examples of like really pioneering rotoscope animation, and also because it just gives me an excuse to talk about Superman for a little bit. They were originally released between 1941 and 1943. They were released as single reel cinematic serials distributed by Paramount Pictures and first produced by Fleischer Studios. So 17 shorts were produced in total. They were developed by Fleischer's own studio called Fleischer Studios up until 1942, when that production studio was dissolved and reassembled as Famous Studios, which took over production of the remaining 8 shorts. But yeah, they were distributed by Paramount Pictures because Warner Brothers didn't actually buy the cinematic distribution rights to DC Comics characters until 1967.
Okay.
So they were initially distributed by Paramount. So this is actually Superman's cinematic debut. There was some live action serials produced afterwards in the mid to late 1940s, but this was actually his debut on kind of the silver screen.
So not only this is the first animated Superman, this is the first film Superman.
Yeah, first filmed Superman. There was already radio serial productions of Superman at that point, and funnily enough, they got both the voice actor for Superman and Lois Lane to reprise their roles in the Fleischer animated series.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a bit good of continuity. Yeah, that's a good bit of continuity.
Yeah, but no, this was the first time a lot of people saw Superman, saw like a fluid realization of like a comic book
And
character.
just to say, it's a pretty good definition of who Superman is.
Oh yeah, it's
It
responsible
really is.
for a lot of like the lasting iconography of the character, which we'll kind of get into. Like a lot of what defines Superman, Max Fleischer is directly responsible for.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Now, can I ask, Max Fleischer, because he's one of the pioneers of animation and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
Did he do Popeye and Betty Boop?
Yes, I'll get into that. I got a little bit of Fleischer's career history.
I just forgot what he did.
Shut up, Stefan! Let me do this!
My ears hurt.
Oh yeah, Ben wears the headphones now. Sorry.
I've always been wearing the headphones. What do you mean?
So this was, again, 1941 cinematic debut. Superman had only debuted at all 3 years prior in 1938.
Like in the comics.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Are you serious?
I didn't know it was that
So
close.
Superman was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. I think it is Shuster. So, I might be again. I'll butcher. We always a running joke on this podcast is that we always butcher creative
It's not even a running joke. We're just bad at
We're just bad at
names.
pronouncing things. So he debuted in Action Comics #1, which was released by the then newly founded Detective Comics Incorporated. And this was in April of 1938. So Paramount in 1941 wanted to capitalize off the success of Superman, who was a incredibly popular comic book character at the time, or like was seeing like huge popularity in his magazine appearances.
So wait, from his first get-go, was Superman already popular?
Yeah, immediately popular, really popular character.
Okay.
Action Comics #1 was an anthology magazine.
Oh, yeah.
okay.
It
I remember that.
I have a reprint copy of it. It's not worth $3 million. It's worth $8, I think.
But it cost 16.
Yeah. Adjusted for inflation, it cost $9. But I have a reprinted copy of Action Comics #1, and the Superman, it's really thick. It's unusually thick for you think of comics now, and I don't think like the dollar to entertainment ratio is that great. Comics are 95% full-page advertisements, kind of punctuating a story that you're trying to immerse yourself in. Yeah, so Superman was incredibly popular after his 1938 debut, and Paramount wanted to really capitalize on this, so they approached Fleischer Studios in 1941 in order to produce a cinematic serial series based on the character. And Fleischer didn't want to do it. He was incredibly apprehensive for working with working on a long kind of serial contract with a major studio. So, in order to dissuade Paramount from entering negotiations, he requested an then unheard of $100,000 budget per episode, which was 4 times the standard budget for a 7-minute Disney short. And to his shock, Paramount actually came back and entered negotiations with them, to which they then agreed on half that budget. So each short cost $50,000 to produce.
Do you know what that's inflated to now?
I have it written down that the $100,000 initial requested amount roughly equates to $1.7 million
Oh, so it's about
for a 7-minute short. But
it's about 800 to 900,000 in today's.
so a little bit about like Max Fleischer and Fleischer Studio. So he's a Polish-American inventor, animator, and producer who is responsible for the invention of the rotoscope in 1915.
Which was like, that was the animation tool of the time.
Yeah. So basically an enormous, animation device which allowed you to trace off reference footage.
It's basically like a giant light box.
Yeah. So Max Fleischer got his start, or at least was initially successful with a serial called Out of the Inkwell, which he produced between 1918 and 1929, from which afterwards he founded his own independent Fleischer Studios in 1929. In that time, Fleischer Studios was responsible for Betty Boop and Popeye. So yeah, basically Max Fleischer invented these two kind of iconic characters of the very early golden age of animation era, and which haven't really lasted past that. They're
I think Popeye has.
Popeye has to some extent, but
I would
both
say
of
Betty Boop has more in iconography.
in iconography, but both those characters are very much early century Americana archetypes.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, like you've got one kind of old fashioned like 1920s old boy like American sailor, and then you've got kind of like your 1920s pin-up figure.
Yeah.
So the first, really successful use of the rotoscope in terms of a feature-length presentation was actually the Fleischer-produced Gulliver's Travels in 1939. Have any of you seen that?
No. I haven't seen it, no.
I remember watching the the Fleischer Gulliver's Travels as a kid, and I remember that's the point when I remember thinking that like animation doesn't normally look like that. It's hard to articulate. I remember just
because it's tracing from real life. It just looks very fluid and realistic.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
You're not used to seeing that. You're used to seeing exaggeration.
Yeah, because like we talk about art always being a form of abstraction, but this was almost just like seeing it as a kid was almost just an emulation of how people move, and it was like kind of shocking because like my exposure to animation had been like the Looney Tunes at that point, and while that came from a very like almost the same era of animation, it was just such a different way of having your figures move and emote. So just like seeing Gulliver just kind of like dance around, I forget the name of the island he's stranded on, was kind of amazing because they took reference footage of people dancing around and just kind of traced over it. The 1941 Superman shorts are actually responsible for a lot of the famous Superman iconography that we know today. So it's responsible for like the basic look of the Daily Planet with the huge kind of planetary insignia on the top of the building. Like that big
really?
statue.
That was invented in this?
That's from the Fleischer series. Superman flying.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that because I know in the original comics he wasn't like he just jumped
leaps tall
he
buildings in a
leaps tall
single
buildings.
bound. Yeah,
But yeah, I knew something got him to fly for the first time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Okay, that's
he
good
used
know.
to jump. He used to jump around.
Yeah,
Now, there's
because in the opening credits it says he leaps in tall bounds, and I was
Yeah,
wondering,
which
is
is
he gonna
cha-
fly in this or not?
Yeah,
And
which
he
is
does.
changed in later serials. But
Okay.
yeah, so Max Fleischer is responsible for flying. They're responsible for faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, like that rhetoric that
That intro.
Is it
Yeah,
a bird?
yeah.
Is it a plane?
Yeah.
No, it's Superman.
Yeah, presumably said by people who had never previously seen a bird or plane.
Maybe they just don't have it in that world.
Well, that's why they're questioning. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? It's like, is it? I don't actually know.
Please someone tell me I'm blind. So the character sheets of the shorts were actually provided by Joe Shuster, who was the actual, one of the creators of Superman. So that's why
That'd be good to get a comic artist to do it because they can draw a character over and over again. Really well.
in different positions. So that's
Yeah.
why at least Superman and Lois, the character sheets of those, the model sheets of those two characters, look incredibly faithful to the original, comic book illustrations.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically my introduction to Superman. Before we start, opening thoughts on the series. What do you think,
Ben?
Again, because I wasn't in the mind frame that this was before television, I was like, this is so unusually well done. But then when I got into that, it's still really well done.
It cost $11 billion to make.
It's still really well done, but I was like, oh, okay, it makes sense now. But yeah, I was really impressed by it.
Oh yeah. I remember you saying, Stefan, that when you started studying animation, this is one of the first things they showed you as an example of what you'll never be able to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you'll never be able to be as good as someone from 80 years ago.
Um,
But I was just, very impressed by it. What about you, Stefan?
Okay, so you can really tell the rotoscoping technique and the thing they founded really into use here. There's some really great uses of organic animation. But there's also a great mixture between cartoon energy and realism that I love. Like, you have your Lois Lane and your Superman who have that comic-like style, like you said. But then some of the antagonists and the villains have the Popeye style eyes and they look like cartoon villains. It's a really odd contrast to see.
Yeah, a lot of the villains I noticed must have I don't know this for sure, but must have been based on model sheets by different artists because you can see that early century rubber hose animation kind of shine through with those characters. Not so much Lois and Clark Kent.
Yeah.
But especially with the villains, you can it's almost a different animation style, especially in the first short with the
I've got a lot to say about that villain.
with the mad scientist.
Were any of these villains based on the villains in the comics?
I don't think so. I think a lot of them are Fleischer creations.
Because I didn't recognize.
But
any
then
of
again,
them.
I was going to mention kind of with the developmental kind of history of Superman. Superman has comparatively very little iconic storylines in the comic books. Like, if you ask kind of just like a casual comic fan, like, what's the most famous Superman story, people kind of struggle to answer that.
There's Death of Superman.
Yeah, I mean, there's Death of Superman, like
that's
one of
it.
the most iconic. In a recent I forget what issue or what story arc it's from, but there's a line in a recent or in a modern comic book where Batman damningly says to Superman, "The last time you inspired anybody is when you died."
That's a great line.
I think I've seen that panel floating
I
around
forget what they're
somewhere.
fighting about, but there's a really good panel. Just Batman is stupidly mean when he wants to be.
the more like he's more memorable as part of the Justice League than as his own.
Superman is like an ethos. He's like he's like textual. He's not so much a character. He represents almost like a state of being or like a an ideal to strive towards.
Yeah, he's kind of the perfect superhero. There's nothing.
Yeah.
So kind of like Captain America is portrayed in the MCU.
Yeah, almost. Except Captain America, I guess, in Marvel Comics. The Marvel Comics comes from that kind of mid-century when kind of social cynicism starts to set in a little bit, and the characters, like Marvel Comics, is based around the principle of, you know, you having your your characters are human first and foremost, and they have faults, and they're superheroes second. They're people who are striving for an ideal, where the DC focuses on a central pantheon of gods.
Yeah, they're pretty much deities.
Basically, like people who are either members of like a metahuman community or who have just reached the absolute peak of human performance or of human physicality.
Even Superman isn't technically human.
No, not technically
he's
human.
Krypton.
Yeah. Obviously, there are many exceptions to that rule, but as a general difference between Marvel and DC Comics and the way that they handle kind of the ethos of their respective universes, that's the main thing that kind of separates them.
Yeah.
And in that regards, I could totally see that in these shorts. I didn't look at them story-wise as much as I saw it as how it presents Superman.
No.
And it presents him really well.
Yeah, they're very, very, just in terms of storytelling or script writing, they're very simple stories, but they just present, like, this is just a perfect distillation of this character.
Yeah, you see one episode, you know exactly how the rest is going to play out.
That's all he's about. While Superman might not be initially compelling as a character itself, as just a vessel for our morality, or, like, a way to exemplify our kind of core morals, like as a society, you don't really get much clearer than Superman. Yeah,
I'm sure we'll get into the actual episode now.
Yeah. That's my little comic spiel. So yeah, the first short, produced in 1941, was released under the title of just Superman. You know,
very creative.
Yeah,
10 out of 10.
So this is the first cinematic foray.
Who's it about?
Batman.
All right, so first of all, like right off the bat, we get, you know, the introduction to Superman, faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive. They convey his origin story in a manner that's very kind of
Condensed?
In a manner that's very condensed and concise. It just tells you that his planet exploded and he landed on Earth, and that's it.
That's all you really need.
Yeah, take that, superhero origin movies.
Yeah, because I do agree with the notion that origin stories, by and large, are kind of dull. You guys ain't got any thoughts on this episode?
Oh, you got to explain the plot a bit.
Oh, okay. The plot of this first episode is basically Superman fights a mad scientist. I thought it was really funny because he's literally referred to in the newspaper as mad scientist.
Ah, yes, that iconic DC character.
So I just pictured his his doctorate being awarded to M scientist, Dr. M scientist.
It's MJ scientist. The J stands for J.
So we're introduced to Clark Kent and Lois Lane, who work at the Daily Planet. There's a bit that I kind of chuckled at, which is when they receive the threat from the mad scientist, and Clark Kent starts talking about the issue, and it fades to black before he's finished talking.
That's right.
Yeah. So basically, this supervillain, Dr. M Scientist, sends a threat to basically destroy Metropolis to the Daily Planet. So he sends a threat to one local newspaper in hopes that that'll get the information out.
Well, I would say it's a famous newspaper, not just like a local.
No, in the introduction they call it major metropolitan newspapers, I suppose. So they can. I mean, that's how word got around at that point. Unless you had like a raven or just started a fire.
He did have a raven though.
Oh, he did. Didn't he? Like a vulture, didn't
He
he?
could have used him.
Yeah.
That bird was really well animated.
I love that bird so much. We can talk about him later.
Yeah.
So yeah, he basically says, "Oh, at midnight I'll destroy Metropolis, and to show a test of my power, this is the ultimate destruction. This is the biggest defeat of power destruction you've ever destruction. I'm gonna ultimate destruction." He blows up a bridge.
I mean, it's still pretty sizable.
I mean, he does melt it from a mountaintop. That's pretty good.
Like, that would be pretty terrifying if you saw it.
I noticed that every time there's an issue in this universe, Superman it's a secret identity. He's in hiding as Clark Kent, but every time he needs to jump into action, he loudly enunciates, "This looks like a job for Superman,"
and then
before running off.
And then he leaves a big shadow that anyone could see of him changing into Superman's
Yeah,
costume.
for some reason he always stands directly next to a large light source, which projects the image of him changing onto a building.
Can I say what I thought was really funny about this episode? So you said this is the first cinematic introduction of Superman.
Yeah.
His first change into Superman, when he changes, is that he's with his other co-workers. He goes into the storeroom and then carefully sneaks out and then jumps out the window. It's so Lois.
Hey, it shows
It's
that
not
his...
anything dramatic. It's just I'm gonna sneak into the storeroom.
It's kind of it's funny and kind of pathetic.
It's even shot from a low angle, so it looks kind of mundane and just benign.
I want a whole serial of just 8 minutes of Superman just trying to get out of the office without people seeing him. He could have just gone outside, just gone into the alleyway.
No, he had to change there. How did no one notice him jumping out the window?
There's a part when
Because it's Superman.
But
That's how.
Superman goes to fight the scientists in his mountaintop observatory. And I also laugh at the fact that, he sees Superman flying in, he breaks his big melty laser. He's fighting everything, he's tearing down the building with his bare hands. It's only at this point where the scientist makes the impressive observation, he isn't human.
Very good scientist.
After Superman...
As if the flying didn't tick him off about that.
Yeah, or the previous 10 minutes of complete destruction, tearing apart the observatory with his bare hands.
Because in my favourite part of the episode, it has to do with the music. It's when Superman first goes up against that laser, and then, he's really struggling against it. And something that I really liked about this episode was it showed that Superman can struggle against these normal people with their super weapons.
It's not effortless. No.
Yeah. And, he tries to fight back against the laser, and then it actually forces him back onto the ground, and then he tumbles and everything, and that's where you get the cape rolling around his body as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have him, triumphantly getting back up and beating the laser with his fist, and you hear the music, in time with it as well. And
each of his punches are lined up with the beat.
Oh,
And it's-
Superman, that underdog.
Yeah, but it's really well done,
Yeah, no, it
especially
is.
for a first introduction. And
can
that
I
was
just-
my favorite. That's to me
it-
what embodies Superman in this serial.
Yeah.
Also, back then, to be able to time anything to music is next to impossible.
Because this is only 5 or 6 years after they first started doing music with animation.
Yeah, Max Fleischer, his initial animations were silent. So yeah, this isn't that. It's the same guy. This isn't that far removed from the silent era,
Yeah.
really.
And yet, this is already getting to the cinematic stage where music is accompanying the visuals to tell the story. The music, when it tumbles, the music does a tumble. And when he starts fighting back, the music also becomes triumphant.
If you go back and watch old Merry Melodies, every footstep has a musical note attached to it.
Merry Melodies pioneered that sort of thing.
But yeah, I just didn't expect Superman to have this sort of stuff. But yeah, and another great piece of animation, which is where I really noticed the rotoscoping and the fluidity of it, is when Lois gets into the plane and tucks the helmet into her.
Yeah,
scarf.
I
that's
noticed
great.
that too.
Yeah, that was I was really blown away by that because
the-
before that it's just they're kind of still.
Yeah.
And then there's literally a 10-second shot of a hand on paper while they're talking, and that's it.
Yeah,
And I was
yeah.
like, don't tell me this is going to be it. This is the animation. But then you get that little shot, and it's really great. And I was like, okay, this is setting the bar for what it's going to be like.
The bit, I think the single best shot in this pilot is the bit when Superman rips open the observatory wall. Did you see that?
Yeah.
I
When he-
cannot remember it.
He
But
just
sure.
kind of clasps his hands together and he rips open the. It's his grand entrance into the mad scientist.
Oh,
there,
yeah,
and
yeah, I
and
remember.
the wall crumbles, and it crumbles realistically, like how rock would crumble.
I've got another one for that. When the mad scientist uses his laser to
Professor
attack the
M
bridge.
scientist.
Yeah, M scientist. I love how most things, what in animation to cheat it, what you would do is you'd have the laser hit the building explodes. This gradually takes off layers and layers of the
Yes,
bridge.
yes.
You see one layer of brick fall, then it does the next layer. You have to think about that to do it.
It's a very detailed-oriented animation.
Did they layer matte paintings for that?
I would
Yes.
assume so,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
That is cell animation at its most finicky, and it is just insane how much, because that is nothing but work. There's no shortcuts in that. It just would have had to been copying and then detail. First, you were talking about the Lois Lane thing. I also love how that scene is almost perfectly shot to show silhouette. If you were to freeze her frame when she's putting her helmet on, if you silhouette it, it's so clear what the action is.
You
every
can
single
still
frame.
discern all her movements. Yeah.
It's just
If-
gorgeous.
For people who don't know why silhouettes are very important in this, do you want to explain, Stefan?
Oh no, you're better at it.
Okay, so silhouettes are important in animation because if you can't get a clear silhouette of a character, it's not always clear what they're doing and what angle they are in and everything. So it's very important to always have a clear silhouette. And it's that's why when you're trying to design characters, you have to try to have a distinctive silhouette so they don't look like everyone else.
Yeah, famously, I think Matt Groening was a huge proponent of that method of character design. Make sure all your characters are distinguishable by silhouette, which is why all the Simpsons
have
quite
designs.
exaggerated silhouettes, and unique silhouettes.
The next thing, the bad guy's introduction, I really loved because its use of secondary action and the character interaction was incredible. Like, every time this is when he's on the chair,
I mean, I'd be pretty upset too if my mother called me Mad.
No.
If your last name is Scientist, you don't name your kid Mad.
We don't know if that's his name.
It is. That's what the paper published it as.
Maybe change his name to that. No, like when
you just imagine him in like the registry office. You want to change your name to what now?
M Scientist. What does the M stand for? Mad.
Look, my birth name is Adolf. I need to change it quickly.
And that's definitely not a good time for these serials which take place during World War II.
No, I bet he had a German name, and he just needed to change it before the war started.
I actually think a lot of the villains would have been German.
They are, and we'll get to that. Because remember, these are all wartime cartoons.
Yes.
Every single one of them was produced during the Second World War.
Okay, continue with what you were saying.
I was just going to say that when the bad guy lifts his head, you see the bird also lift his head, and he does it afterwards as a secondary action. And I love that detail in that character interaction because you would have had to animate him first and then put the bird there afterwards to align his actions to the main character's actions.
Yeah, something I really enjoyed was the body animation. Because it's rotoscope, you do get that very realistic sense. So when, like, one of my favorite parts of body animation in this, apart from when Superman is flying against the ray, it's when the Mr. M Scientist...
Mr. M Scientist... He lost his doctorate. He's just Mr. M Scientist now.
Lois, when she's tied to the chair and he's talking to her, you can see the subtle changes in his body and the bird as well. And yeah, that's...
The bird was moving every frame and it was always little subtle waves. It's just such a...
Yeah, just the subtlety in the animation in this with the rotoscoping is phenomenal.
You guys actually didn't mention my favourite thing, which I thought was like when the building is like leaning towards Superman and he has to push it back.
Oh, was this that?
Oh, that's great, yeah.
Yeah, there's this incredible scene where the lighting makes it look like a Art Nouveau piece where you've got the bronzes on the building and then Superman pushes it back. One, I love the...
Do you mean Art Deco?
The Art Deco, sorry.
Yeah.
I love the elasticity of the building there because it looks so cartoonish.
Yeah, it doesn't buckle under its own weight or anything. It literally just like flops.
Yeah, it flops. And then I love how it shows Superman like doing the weight, like...
Don't worry, 1 out of 5 buildings have this problem.
He takes the weight. I love how they animate the slow, like him trying to get it under his weight.
And there's also, like, you also get the shots inside the building as well with the people, like, they're, like, falling all over the place. All the objects in the office.
I don't care that he caught that
flying
building.
around.
Everyone in there is dead.
I know, but
everyone would just. You made buildings out of concrete then. Everyone just would have hit the side wall immediately.
But the animation...
All the asbestos would have come out of the roof.
The animation itself was, like, it's a really nice detail to add.
Yeah, something I was going to say is this was the time in which the animation principles, your follow through, your exaggeration, your timing, all this is where it was pioneered. This is where this stuff was invented. And you can... this is done in such an intricate way. You can almost see the cogs in the animators' minds ticking as they're trying to think of these ways to convey these actions.
Yeah.
Like... When it shows that scene that Ben was saying where the objects in the building are falling over, the cabinet is solid drawn to look like it's a 3D form. And when it crashes forward in the perspective, that perspective shift is perfect. And there's no way... I know there's some rotoscoping involved, but there's no way that would have been easy to keep on model every single frame. It's just a real praise to those animators for doing it.
Again, they had like almost $1 million an episode.
Again, that's pretty good. But yeah, I thought, again, secondary action and follow through was just the things that really made this episode for me. There was just so much detail and so much to look at and just be impressed by.
Okay, so good introduction, Superman?
Oh, wait, lighting. Oh. The lighting was so good!
There was one part in particular which I thought was really great, was the introduction to Mr. M Scientist. Dr. M Scientist.
His name is Dr. Scientist.
Dr. Scientist?
So, when he first turns on the machine, you have all this dramatic lighting going on to him. And and just the way it's done is very, it's just very well done.
This is good. It's real good.
Yeah.
Go watch them. They're good.
Yeah, they're free on YouTube.
They're free, yeah.
The lighting, like, nowadays you can have effects and you can use lens blurs and all this fancy stuff. If you actually pause it frame by frame, you find that the lighting is just like a coloured pencil that's been like shaved in a particular way. And I love that texture to it. You don't see it in the animation because it goes so quick. But just that, the way each frame is hand painted and handcrafted, each one, gives it that just incredible sense of detail and just atmosphere. I love it.
And it's all cohesive as well, so you, like...
Yeah, it's not like it's inconsistent.
Yeah. It's very consistent.
How long did they spend on these? Michael, how long did each episode take to make?
17 and 3 years.
See, whatever that averages
That's
out to.
insane.
I know.
I mean, that is a lot. I mean, again, it used to take like quite a sizable team of animators to make... What was it? It took like 8 months to animate 7 minutes of finished footage for Looney Tunes. And it took a team of like... I remember being surprised. It took a huge team of animators, but because of like contractual law or contract law, only a few could be credited.
Only 2.
Yeah, a lot of the time.
That scared me because I saw the credits. I was like, "There's no way this was done by 2 animators."
Yeah, it's like how a stipulation of Mel Blanc's voiceover work contract said that he could on almost every Merry Melodies and Looney Tunes short, he had to be the sole credit for voice acting. So there's a lot of times when there's very clearly women voicing roles in Looney Tunes, and it just really confused me as a kid. Like, God damn, Mel Blanc is the best there is. Sounds exactly like a woman. Yeah, Mel Blanc famously didn't even do Elmer Fudd. That was a different actor.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Shall we get on to the second
So
episode?
the second episode is entitled "The Mechanical Monsters," where Superman fights that. Discuss.
Okay. The thing I hate the most... it's a really good episode. Like, all of them are very good. But what I hate about this is that Superman's powers are very inconsistent in the fact that he is super strong. We've seen him literally push a building back up, yet he cannot open the panel of a robot. When he's flying to save Lois and get all the jewels and stuff. He cannot open a panel of a robot. Maybe
it's made of kryptonite. We don't know.
It's not.
I'm not even sure kryptonite was a thing at this point.
We see him take on a lot of these robots later on. I'll get into that later. But still, he should be able to open what looked like just a normal panel.
Maybe it's glued together.
He shouldn't be able to get through that. We see him tear apart the observatory in the previous episode.
Maybe Superman is really meta and at that stage goes, no, I'll let the audience think that I'm struggling.
or do you think like, Lois got trapped again. I don't like this. I'm just going to let her...
He looks at his watch. It's only been 4 minutes.
I'm going to drag this out a bit longer.
Drag this out. Oh, it's so hard. Ow.
Again, though, apart from that, it's a pretty good episode.
Basically, the whole plot of the episode is that another mad scientist dude.
Is he also named M Scientist?
I can only presume it's M Scientist's brother.
M Scientist Jr.?
Crazy scientist.
Crazy scientist.
Dr. C Scientist.
The C Scientist, okay.
Basically develops a range of...
Flying robots.
Flying robbery robots.
Actually, I really like that introduction where you think it's a plane flying over.
You do think it's a bird or a plane, but no, it's the robbery robot.
And this is it's very not liquid in its motions, but...
Fluid?
It's rubbery, as you said.
Yeah.
Which I think is a fun way to animate these, I
guess.
Yeah. Going against Superman.
It's that old animation trope of material that should be quite rigid is animated with kind of fluid or rubbery properties. My favorite thing in this episode is the first thing that happened. So there's been a range of robberies committed by the robbery robots. So Clark Kent and Lois Lane are sent to cover the opening of a jewel exhibition where all of the world's priceless jewels are put onto a single podium in the middle of a room with comparatively very little security.
There's not even lasers everywhere, and there's only like 2 cops outside.
No, that's what I love. The increased security forces, as described in the Daily Planet newspaper, amounts to 3 policemen guarding the door. And then later on in the episode, when things get heated up, they add 2 more policemen.
You would think that they would put a glass case over it, or, just not do it if there's all these robberies
No,
happening.
absolutely no security.
They would assume that they were thinking as a police
The door's
force.
just open. It's just...
No security checks.
You can get right up close to the jewels. There's not a guard next to the jewels. All the guards are at the door. So Clark Kent is there admiring the jewels. And he sees Lois Lane. And he asks her, "Oh, Lois, what are you doing here?" But I loved it because he sounds genuinely
He's so
angry.
aggressive.
Lois, what the f*** are you doing here?
But yeah, he sounded so aggressive. One thing I wanted to say was with the robots animation, just to start with. I love how you said they were elastic as well.
Rubbery.
Rubbery, that one.
Elastic.
But the fact that they walked in segments, like the normal human walk is like you're bipedal, so you walk more organically. But here, it like the arms would move first, the legs would move first, and it'd be like one limb at a time. And every motion was made to feel really heavy. And
Yeah.
considering this is a time in which robots are a very new thing, that was probably one of the first times a robot has been animated. And it is convincingly a robot. Like,
Yeah.
you look at that, it's like, yeah, that is no way a person in a metal suit. That is a robot.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that as well. How it's one of the first instances of robots in animation.
And it looks like functional as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the way in which, if you look at all the cogs, because of, again, the solid drawing and the amount of time spent detailing these characters to look 3D, like, you can see all their limbs move and it makes sense. And I also love how, when it moves, its first action is faster. Like, you can actually see frame by frame. To move its arms, it starts fast, but then it slows.
So
like,
it doesn't
very
have the
quickly.
traditional ease in and ease out.
No,
technique.
it's like a very stunted easing, which works so well. And the fact that these guys had to think of these skills with no digital error, it's mind-blowing to me. I cannot understand how this was done. It's just incredible.
When they're flying as well, there's one shot which lasts like for a fraction of a second, but it has this beautiful
Spin?
No, there's a beautiful matte painting
Oh.
when they're flying over Metropolis, or I don't think the city is ever named directly.
No.
There is an incredible bird's eye matte painting of
Yeah.
of just like
A lot of the matte paintings are
landscape. It's
beautiful.
yeah.
And especially for city sculptures as well, where you have to do each individual building.
Yeah. Also, this is the first episode which features Superman's now iconic phone booth
Yeah.
change thing.
Oh, was this invented in this cartoon?
I don't actually know.
Let's just say it is,
Yeah.
and then if we're wrong, just don't add us.
Yeah. I would say yes, absolutely. If it's wrong, we'll just cut that out.
But we're not going to research it nonetheless.
No. We'd hate to be competent for a change.
I have two more things about the robots I wanted to say. One, when they're flying in the air, the robot does 2 360 spins. How? How did they animate that? It was
Okay,
it so
they drew a
perfect.
robot, and then they drew it slightly different.
No, but
They
Ben,
drew
it is the
call it
consistency
planning.
is so good.
They called Korea.
No, it wasn't Korean this time.
You just lock 500 people in a room and then wait 7 months.
It's... The second thing I really loved in terms of its just the attention to detail, the follow through, all the animation principles is where Superman has to battle 5 robots consecutively. Like everything, there's so much movement in that scene.
Something I really like.
Oh, that's great.
As
yeah,
well,
we
it's
just-
like where he actually is getting beaten down by them. Again, showing that he isn't this invulnerable person. He can be beat.
Yeah.
But no, he just perseveres and actually beats them. Which, again, like, he's not really an underdog, but it's an underdog moment.
That was the bit that when he's fighting the robots, that was the point when I thought that section, that little clip of him just fighting them hasn't aged at all. Like,
No.
that is still Superman. That's still
Yeah.
what he does.
And
Yeah.
in terms of animation, that hasn't aged at all. That is still, to this day, considered fantastic animation.
Yeah.
By us, at least.
That little bit,
yeah.
that little section, and the series as a whole is just absolutely.
We didn't
timeless.
explain the story. He fights a mad
That's
scientist
robots.
and
It's
robots.
the
That's
plot
it.
of every episode.
And then,
Yeah.
Lois Lane writes a story.
And
then
she gets
takes
captured
it-
somehow. Yeah. So at the
Lois, could you ever write a story that doesn't almost result in your death?
I love how Lois Lane, she does something heroic. She's actually done some pretty good heroic moments, but she has a 2-part plan. Part 1, do something heroic. Part 2, die.
Yeah.
No,
Like
part
she
2 is
never
hope.
plans part 2.
Part 2 is hope Superman saves her on the off chance that he's not rescuing someone else around the world.
This next episode, entitled The Bulleteers, I don't think there's too much to say about it, but what did you guys think of it?
It gets a bit samey from here on out. Lewis tries to
Lois
investigate...
Lane!
Lois!
I'm sorry. Lois! So Lois investigates this super weapon or super evil people. She gets captured. Superman fights them off. He gets beaten a bit, and then he beats them. And then Lois at the end goes, "Oh, thank you, Superman, for saving me. I'm gonna write this piece about it." And then Clark Kent goes, "Okay, he sure did save you. Wink, wink." And then that's every episode from here on out.
I love the added detail that in a lot of these, he pulls the villains up by their shirts and they all have the same dangling animation where he just always drags them up, he just throws them into a jail. There's no bureaucracy, there's no anything, just chuck them straight in the jail.
They just leave one cell door open specifically for Superman every week.
Superman's cell.
You just punch someone in there.
I will say the grand scale of the city in this episode is really well portrayed. It's like, because they're flying around in a bullet car going all around the city, you actually get a sense that this city is very large.
Oh yeah, Metropolis, I mean, in the comic books anyway, is one of the largest cities in North America. Yeah. DC has a disproportionate amount of major cities.
Yeah,
There's way too many.
I have a lot to say in terms of the cartoonish animation in this.
Say it then!
So the opening shot I love because it's just this peaceful town, and then with no resistance, the car goes straight through the building. And I love that because it shows how fast it's going. But if you look at it frame by frame, it's almost a comedy shot. How just it looks like it's passing through paper.
Yeah.
This building.
And then even like the sensationalist newspaper headline that says like bullet car destroys police headquarters. It punched a hole in the wall. We talk about destroyed it.
But it
Just patch it up in half an afternoon.
Did it collapse?
I think it did.
Also, I like how...
Do you want it to collapse? Aim for the bottom of the building,
Also,
not the top.
I like how Metropolis seems to have a disproportionate amount of supervillains living in the surrounding mountain range.
Why would they surround themselves?
This is the second group that lives in the mountain. Like, when it was panning up, I couldn't tell if they just reused, like, the tracking mat from,
The first one?
or the panning mat from the first episode. Because it, like, pans, like, the same mountaintop. I was like, they're just gonna cut to the same Dr. M scientist.
Look, the police probably didn't raid that observatory. They were just like, oh, it's being burnt down. That's all good. But actually, they were just another people living underneath them.
Yeah, it just came back. Just like, supervillains work like Roman emperors. They just stab one and then another one takes its place.
They just go up the hierarchy. Whoever gets to the mountain first. No, but the other thing I really loved is one of the really great. It's cartoony. I wish I could show you the frame. It uses smearing really well. And smearing is, as we've discussed before, it's where you bend the model of the like shape, object or whatever to cover a longer distance or to make it seem cartoony.
To infer motion blur as well.
Yeah, to make it seem quick or that sort of thing.
It's like painterly streaks.
When the rocket car heads straight towards Superman, he punches it to ricochet it, and if you pause it,
You can see the...
it does a 90-degree like smear.
90-degree motion blur, it's great.
That looks hilarious. And in the motion, when it's fast and sped up, it looks so cartoony and just energetically fun. It's just incredible.
It's so fun, just like he hit it so hard, just immediately changed course.
Yeah,
That kind of
was
reminds me
great.
of Into the Spider-Verse, where they have that shot at the start where Spider-Man's on a date with Mary Jane, and then his spider senses perk up. He looks behind him. He just punches the car.
But punches the car back out the window.
Yeah. It's very similar to that, and like a great use of that exaggeration of timing.
It's a visual gag.
Yeah.
Okay,
It has so much weight behind it that can just be redistributed so easily.
Oh, and another thing in terms of Michael's famous term, respecting the beat, using that, there's a scene where the rocket car goes through a factory, and there's a split second where there's nothing. Then the factory goes red. You see, like, the lighting red. For a split second as, like, an anticipation frame. Then it goes yellow, and then it just blows up in, like, 2 frames. It just... That works so well for me. Like, just that little space needed to show, oh, it's passed through, nothing's happened, and now all hell's broken loose.
All right. Also, I also appreciate how the Metropolis Police Department's only response to like crisis or terror threats is just to get 3 policemen to fire machine guns at it.
And then they hope Superman turns
Just
up.
hope Superman turns up.
Actually, I will say the shooting animation in this was really well done.
Yeah, the when they shoot the Tommy guns, it's so
Yeah.
smooth, just like the
Yeah.
spray that they
And you can
they
actually
do
feel the
overhead.
weight of them doing it
Yeah.
as well.
What I also loved in this, talking about, I was just hearing the Tommy guns. I just remembered what the rocket's doing in that scene. Whenever the rocket moves, it has this really nice flare follow through. Like, that's all hand painted as well. I just really like that because you could really trace its line of action.
Yeah.
It's just really aesthetic.
My final thoughts were, it wasn't my favorite because it was very similar to the one previous. It was probably my least favorite.
Yeah, I should have done a better job at picking a variety. But I remember watching the Bulleteers as a kid, so that's why I wanted to pick it, yeah.
Yeah, it's good, but it's because it's very samey at that point in the short. It didn't gel with me as much as it would have with you.
I don't want to say anything.
Okay, let's get on to the Terror on the Midway.
Yeah, so in this one, Superman fights a gorilla.
The end.
The end.
Lois
Also-
does a heroic thing, but then has to get Superman to save her.
Also, this is the first one when I noticed that the introduction was changed. That they
Yeah,
no longer say,
I noticed
they
that.
no longer say able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. They say can soar higher than any aeroplane.
Oh,
So
cool.
that's the point when they really cemented the fact that Superman can fly. That's his thing now. I really like this one, and it's the first one when I remember thinking that Clark Kent waits until the last possible second to do anything in any situation.
Yeah, almost 75% of the episode he's not even in it.
Like you'd think he'd put on the costume and go help everybody once the giant ape escapes and
We should
everyone
say
start.
this takes place in a circus tent.
Oh yeah, big circus, a giant ape escapes.
Instead of someone trying to calm it down, they just anger it. Even though they already have these other roaring animals in the circus tent as well.
Yeah.
They could have just assumed it was part of the act, but no, everyone just immediately
No,
gets
everyone
scared.
immediately thinks it's dangerous. Just no one thinks, oh yeah, big gorilla. That's the type of thing you see at the circus. No, someone goes, an animal? I didn't expect to see that at the circus, and then
Despite
runs
there
out the
being
door.
elephants and lions and everything.
Yeah. Like they like no one seemed fazed by the fact that they trained elephants to do the conga.
I was very fazed by
But
that.
everyone shat their pants upon seeing a marginally larger gorilla.
It had a very scary face, though.
A face so scary the cameraman didn't bother to focus the shot.
And then it rubbed off on Lois as well.
Yeah, I noticed that.
There was a few where it was just, what happened with the aspect ratio? It just went weird.
Yeah, unless maybe it was a larger unfinished shot that they just needed Lois's reaction, so they zoomed in on it.
That actually seems
That-
reasonable.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
I liked Superman's transformation sequence in this because
He just goes
during
behind
it-
the thing.
Yeah,
Oh,
but there was a Jaguar or something that was
Yeah.
attacking him while that was happening, and I thought that was a nice twist.
Yeah, that was great. You still see the silhouette of him just just mercilessly beating this cat in the face, which I appreciated. I like how Superman is not beyond just beating an animal to death.
He put him in the jail.
He
likes
The cell.
putting things in jail.
Did he throw the Jaguar in jail? They just use the same shot of just like a humanoid silhouette and throwing it in.
Just with a Jaguar.
You put the
face.
Jaguar sound effects.
One animation I really liked in this, like, of course, by now we've come to expect that there's great attention to detail in animation and gestures and whatnot. But I loved when on the, what do you call that tightrope thing? The pillar? Let's just call it the crow's nest. That really tall
Oh, yeah.
pillar.
Oh yeah, yeah.
When that's falling down, Lois
Oh, when she
Lane
rolls off
slides.
it. Yeah,
that
yeah.
looks so organic.
Yeah,
Like,
that-
she's really slow, and then it picks up pace, and then Superman has a really quick timing to grab it.
Yeah.
That timing is just really well done.
Yeah, to see her actually kind of her weight shift and her arm, because she like rolls over her own arm. Like,
Yeah.
it looks amazing. Yeah, and again, that would have to be based on reference footage.
Would have, because that really stood out.
You can't just like no one can.
How
come
would
up
you
with
reference footage that? You just push someone off a table. Have fun. We're recording you.
that. I'd be scared of the guy that just had that. Does anyone have reference footage of a woman falling off a crow's nest? Harry, what about? Oh yeah, I got reference footage. Right.
One of the animation parts I really liked was when Superman was fighting the giant ape.
Oh yeah, just kind of decked it in the face. A bit.
Yeah, but like it was very clear and easy to follow.
Yeah,
which I
yeah.
feel like
Those are
a
all
lot
the
of
fight
things.
scenes.
Like but like out of all the fight scenes in this, I felt this was the most clear and easy to follow, and like the choreography of it was well done.
Yeah.
I think you're over exaggerating. It's not a giant ape. He's a marginally
Marginally
larger
larger.
ape.
But the
No,
choreography.
He
is still
starts off as a
good.
giant ape. When he comes through the big top curtain and he's like enormous, he's like, yeah, that's King Kong. That's just an enormous gorilla. And then when Superman's tying him up, he's maybe 9 feet tall.
And
And
that
then-
was his stunt double.
It was the same thing in the episode with the robots, though, where at first the robot was only somewhat taller than Superman, and then when he's fighting all of them, they're all like 2-3 times his size.
Yeah.
In the Star
To be
Wars,
fair, there was hundreds of robots. Last thoughts on Superman fights an ape.
you pretty much said it.
Okay.
Yeah, it was fun. Again, it's not as samey as the last one.
No, it was different, which I appreciate.
Yeah, it was a different setting, and it actually had civilians in the mix as well this time.
He killed an animal pretty good.
Yeah, you know,
Threw him in jail.
we're not above a little
My
bit of
favourite
animal
part about
cruelty.
Superman's character is the insatiable bloodlust.
So it's Henry Cavill.
It's Henry Cavill Superman.
What
yeah.
about
okay.
his best line in this short where he goes, "Wow, tonight's a perfect night for a murder."
Yeah, that was weirdly... In the 40s, you could just say that. You could just say shit. It's fine.
So should we move on to the
To
fifth
Nazis.
episode?
We'll move on to
Okay.
Nazis.
Now, this one I picked initially. I was looking up certain like fan rankings to see which episodes were the best. And
This
one...
was the worst.
No, this one came up as people really like praising a lot of the animation, a lot of the silhouettes in it. So I picked it. The fact that it was called Jungle Drums and made in 1943 should have been my first clue. As soon as the first shot came up, I remember thinking, I've made a huge mistake.
So basically, this was the 40s trying to represent native tribes and the Ku Klux Klan.
But then they just kicked the
And-
Nazis in there for good measure.
And yeah, Hitler was in it.
Yeah, I made a note of once the first shot came up, I expected to have to awkwardly discuss racism on this podcast, and then it ended up me realizing that we would have to awkwardly discuss Nazis instead. So basically, the episode is about the Nazis are running a covert Ku Klux Klan operation in
And native
in
South
what I
American
presume
tribe?
is Northern Africa, because it was
Oh, yeah.
it was where German troops were stationed during
Okay.
World War II. So I'm not sure why the native Africans would listen to the Ku Klux Klan. It seems like kind of a counterintuitive way to dress when trying to deal with African tribes.
I guess it's a bit more about slavery.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if it was critical or sympathetic.
I don't know.
Like I genuinely couldn't tell because
They just weren't portrayed well at all.
like the Africans were portrayed unflattering at best.
Considering the time and era, I don't think sympathizing is any word that would be thought of.
Yeah. Okay, no, actually, the biggest coincidence of this episode is when you see a plane being shot down into the jungle around where the Nazi members are, and guess who happens to be on it? Take a guess.
Nazis.
No.
Oh.
Take a guess.
Superman.
No, it was Lois. Out of all people who was gonna uncover a secret plot in the Africas, it was Lois Lane. Of course. I just think that's just such a big coincidence.
What was the German plan again?
They didn't
It
have
was-
one.
it
They
was-
wanted to shoot down planes.
Yeah, they wanted to shoot down planes in Africa, but they had to dress
underwater.
up. But underwater, and then they had to dress up as the clan to do it, and then rule an African tribe.
This is a pretty terrible plan.
And then Hitler at the end is like, I can't believe that plan failed.
Curse you, Superman!
Yeah, Hitler is just shocked that this ridiculous plan went awry at the end. How could it possibly fail?
How could it possibly work?
Everything was in place. We would dress up as the Ku Klux Klan. We would infiltrate Northern Africa. We would send a very obviously German general to dress as the devil and rule this tribe. And then we would covertly shoot down a couple of planes carrying reporters. Also, couldn't Superman just kind of directly help with the war effort?
He totally could.
He just kind of rocks up whenever something goes generally wrong, or like just wherever he happens to be.
Is he bulletproof at this point?
I don't actually know.
'Cause, yeah, we don't see anyone shooting at him.
Because if he's not, fair enough.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, although you can say it's decent, it's insensitive and all that sort of thing. I really like the silhouette animation when they're dancing around the bonfire, like that lighting and how it only shows the silhouettes animated. I love how they do lighting. Like, how do they make the fire look so bright and vibrant?
Oh,
This is when
something
they
I
just
noticed
created color.
with all the fight, they just created color.
Colour
Yeah,
was-
like
it was
colour
black and white.
Color was another Max Fleischer invention. Color was invented in 1939 by Fleischer Studios.
Something that I really liked about the fire in these episodes was that they were like painted brush strokes
Yeah.
with like a lot of black billowing smoke as well. Whereas like when you think about smoke, like animated fire and everything, you don't usually see that billowing black smoke that usually is usually there with it, but with this it does. And the fact that you can see like the brush strokes, but it all blends in together, I really like that aesthetic.
Yeah.
good.
No, I agree.
And now we move on to the finale, which is Secret Agent, which was the last short produced by Famous Studios, which aired, which debuted in 1943. So this is the grand finale, and the only short not to feature Lois Lane.
Yes, but they use the same voice actor.
And the same model sheet.
they just dyed her hair blonde.
So it may as well have been.
It probably is just Lois Lane, just with a wig.
So what did you guys think of the Secret Agent?
I really liked what Clark Kent got to do on this at the start. Where, like, he sees this shootout happening. What do? Just jump onto the back of the car.
I liked that. It might be the Terminator.
It was really cool.
Yeah.
And, like, risking his persona as Clark Kent to do this as well.
I also
thought that was
love
a really
how the
great
police
character.
are trailing them and don't notice that there's this
Yeah,
man
I know.
hanging behind the car.
But yeah, I thought that was, like, a really fun way to introduce the adventure that's ensuing. And I also really like how he turns the bridge as well.
Yeah, that was great. Also, the bit when the agent is caught in the gears is genuinely distressing.
It is.
It baffles me how they animated those gears.
Oh yeah, because
those
they
gears
draw
look
every teeth.
They
every
look
tooth
like
in the gear,
3D assets. How did they do that? It looks so good.
They're just good at their job, Stefan.
Anyway, with the Secret Agent, I also noticed at the start that when they're describing Superman and giving him his little brief introduction,
They changed the intro again.
Yes, his speed is upgraded now to faster than lightning, but his power has been downgraded to marginally better than lapping waves.
But what? That's such a specific thing.
No, they say something like
It was a lot of nature references.
yeah, he's like as powerful as a hurricane, or like as powerful as like what did you say, like the sea or something? As powerful as like
that, yeah.
storming waves or crashing waves.
Oh, that sounds a bit better than marginally powerful than lapping waves.
But it was, a lot of comparisons to force of nature.
It does seem like as the episodes go on, it tries to address the war issue.
Oh yeah,
a lot more.
it definitely, because again, like America's involvement in the war was only initiated in late 1941. So you can see as it kind of as the war situation kind of grows more dire, it does progress into like the cartoons do become more patriotic and more they use kind of wartime themes more prevalently.
This particular episode ends with him saluting the flag as he zooms up.
But which is not, it doesn't feel like it's written as a finale, but that last shot kind of almost feels like one.
It's a really nice flag animation though. Like
It's
that
beautiful.
flag cycle is gorgeous.
It's like 6 or 7 frames that are repeated, but it looks beautiful. Like they don't do the easy thing and just kind of wave like the outer contours of the flag. They
thing.
They actually have the corner like fold in on itself, and there's not too much to talk about with this one. It's a fun finale. It's one of the few ones when he doesn't really face supernatural threats. It's pure kind of like industrial saboteurs.
And that's kind of what I don't like about these later episodes. This one and Jumble Jums.
You like the fantastical stuff.
Yeah, like the first episode has the vulture who looks like Mad Cat from Inspector Gadget laughing and snickering, and these just feel so real and sad.
Yeah.
I prefer the snickering vulture and M scientist.
Yeah, I miss Dr. M Scientist.
I'm just gonna start my closing thoughts on this episode. Yeah, it was, I guess because, as you were saying, it doesn't have that fantastical element that he has to battle against. It's kind of meandering, and Superman was actually out of commission for most of the episode as well, where he just got knocked out and dragged into a room. So the character we want to follow, we couldn't. But I guess it was also a nice change to follow this new woman, secret agent.
Lois Lane.
No, it's not Lois Lane.
It's Lois Lane with blonde
It's Lois
hair.
Lane's twin.
Oh, fun
Lane
fact.
Lois.
Hey, Dr. M Scientist was voiced by Jack Mercer, who also voiced Popeye and Felix the Cat.
Ah.
So he's Popeye?
Yeah.
So you're saying he could have probably beaten Superman if he ate spinach beforehand.
He
Yes.
looks exactly like how you expect someone from the 1940s to look like. Just sad and wearing a newsboy hat.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, like that was our little like discussion of Max Fleischer Superman series. What did everybody think?
I think for the time it is a great representation of superheroes.
Yeah.
And it's like, especially being the first foray into the cinema as well. I think what it does, what it achieves, and it's like how it's represented it's kind of like, to me, it's kind of surprising it took for so long for superheroes to be back into the forefront of pop culture again, I guess.
Yeah.
Because like we've had like we've had a few superhero movies now and again throughout the decades, but then in the 2000s it really amped up.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm really surprised it took that long from the 40s when we had a first superhero on screen.
I mean, superheroes have always been culturally prevalent and culturally accepted and enjoyed on a grand scale. I think it's only now, due to like recent kind of cinematic success stories, that they've really like enveloped the public consciousness. No, I absolutely love it. I think it is a perfect distillation of Superman as a character, and of a perfect representation of superheroes as just like a
Icon?
Yeah, like an icon, just as a concept.
No, I can't really say anything that you guys haven't already said, so I'm just gonna say it's a pioneer of the animation genre of animation. It's a pioneer of superheroes in the film industry, and yeah, it's almost it establishes what will become a staple for many years to come.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's it.
Awesome.
Great discussion, Michael. Thanks for it was a good, interesting film to watch.
Yeah, this is the furthest we've gone back in history as well so far.
Yeah.
So it was nice to see something from this era.
Yeah. Like I'll probably, as we go forward, I'll like to do more, from this golden age of animation. I like to do more kind of like Chuck Jones shorts and things like that. But
because that's where you can really get into
animation
histories,
techniques,
techniques.
But what are we talking about now?
So we are up to our animation news segment. That's what it's called. I'm not going to change it.
Ba-doom.
No,
Why didn't you call it something that's notoriously difficult to say?
Because I couldn't think of anything notoriously difficult to say. So basically, a lot of trailers came out this week. Like,
good on them.
A lot. So we're just going to quickly go through them. So we literally just before we started recording, the trailer for Onward, the next Pixar film after Toy Story 4, came out. What do you guys think? Quickly.
I like Michael's first reaction, which was, it looks hilariously nothing like a Pixar film.
Yeah. No, it doesn't. It looks like a DreamWorks.
Yeah.
Because like anything else, any other studio. What's that stupid studio
DreamWorks.
that does the... No, not...
Blue Sky.
No, Illumination.
No, Blue Sky... The Illumination. It looks like one of those.
Yeah, so some images released yesterday, and we were talking about it then. Yeah, because I saw it first. I just noticed that it just doesn't look like anything Pixar's ever done, because Pixar's never gone into like hardcore fantasy or anything. Pixar's mostly just done stuff in the real world, but then fantastical stuff happen, whereas this is set in a fantastical world, which we've never gotten from Pixar.
Which
before.
I think is Pixar trying to reach out to different genres, because Coco was the first film that, for me, felt nothing like a Pixar film. In fact, it wasn't until I saw the credits that I realised it was Pixar who made Coco.
I think Coco feels very Pixar.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they have been branching out. There used to be kind of a Pixar formula, which was just things that don't talk.
That's true.
But no, they recently they've kind of branched out into stuff that is kind of demonstrably not Pixar-like.
Yeah.
I suppose so. And this was the first one when just 100% that. Just like, did not look like anything they had done before.
It looks great though. Like the animation and the aesthetic looks really nice.
And Chris Pratt just sounds like Rex Dangerfield from the Lego Movie too.
Yeah, he's doing this weird kind of like uppity,
Macho.
heroic like voice.
It's fun though.
Anyway, what was that other one that scared me?
The Dark Crystal trailer.
Yeah.
So Dark Crystal Age of Resistance is a prequel series coming onto Netflix. 10 episodes, I think about an hour each. Done with puppetry, and puppetry is animation, as that's what animation is based upon.
Michael is
so
shaking
that's why we're
his head
talking
at
about
you.
it. And I love it.
Jim Henson puppets come in two varieties: endearing and upsetting.
And this is full of the upsetting part, I guess.
The Dark Crystal is just full of the upsetting puppets.
Or just upsetting everything.
Yeah, but this, like...
It looks...
I remember watching it and thinking, this looks incredible, just the production value and the production design and the design of the puppets themselves.
Wait, what are you talking about, the original film or the trailer?
Just both. Oh, no, the trailer, sorry. I feel like if this was released in cinemas, it would bomb.
You know what? Probably.
Yeah, that's my prediction. I think it would scare children.
Well, I don't think the first film did incredibly well.
No, that doesn't speak to the quality of the potential quality of this either, because it does look genuinely impressive.
That's why I think putting it on Netflix already.
It's a good idea.
Because that way you already have like millions of subscribers. That way they can just access it when they want.
The Dark Crystal film was a children's film, or at least like a fantasy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and it's very terrifying.
Yeah,
towards
but
the end.
You got to realize, also by Jim Henson, The Labyrinth was also rated G, and that has some weird things in
And
it.
I've been thinking since last week. Do you know how
David Bowie.
we're talking about how kids could handle that Dark Harvest from Invader Zim?
Yeah,
I've
but
been thinking about.
I mean thematically dark. I don't mean just
okay.
being inundated with horrifying imagery.
Yeah, okay, but I've been thinking that I think kids can handle it better than we assume they can. I don't think they can fully comprehend everything. So, like,
Of course, I'm not saying...
With Invader Zim, you wouldn't expect kids to think, oh, they're gonna die now that they've had their organs replaced. Whereas watching them as an adult, that's where my mindset comes into.
Yeah.
It comes to all the the complication that comes with that, whereas kids wouldn't.
There's an excellent, again, it's disagreeable to some extent, but there's a quote that I find interesting by a comic book writer named Grant Morrison. For a little bit of background, Grant Morrison, he's a big proponent of superheroes as kind of the new Greek mythology. Like, they represent ideas. He doesn't really like them as a vessel for stories about being human, stories about humanity. He views them as a way to express an ideal, to show the absolute ultimate kind of fantasy. He loves kind of superheroes with all his heart, and he was always more of a DC guy because DC really, Marvel really focused on the humanity and the darkness and kind of the struggles of being human in a fantastical world where the DC is just this epic pantheon. But he made the observation that you have to, when viewing, I guess, superheroes or a lot of media, you have to kind of look at it as a kid would look at it, because a kid, an adult will look at Batman and start to kind of poke holes in the logic. Why wouldn't this person, someone who's in Bruce Wayne's position, why wouldn't he channel, he's a multi-billionaire, why wouldn't he channel all his funding into, housing redevelopment projects or kind of feeding the homeless? Why wouldn't he use his, elevated social position to actually do something useful in fighting, Gotham's crime problem? Why does he take these millions of dollars and spending it on gadgets and the Batmobile and the Batsuit? Why are there all these kind of logic problems? But a kid would just kind of say, because it's not real. That's why.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not even think of it that simply.
Yeah. It's inherently an adult thing to look for the logic in a story, but stories are fantasy. For the most part, you can kind of put logic aside and kind of just enjoy the tale of morality or about heroism. And he's a big proponent of that.
And that's Michael's tangent on the Dark Crystal trailer.
Yeah, talked about morality and superheroes.
I'm sad now.
So another trailer we got was...
Wait. No. I know for a fact Ben really likes the Dark Crystal. He didn't get anything
we're
to
running
say.
out of time.
We can fit it in. We'll edit it later. Just, what did you like about it? I know you liked the
I liked everything about it. I love puppetry. It's one of my favorite forms of filmmaking because you're just taking this object... It's kind of similar to why I love stop motion as well. You're taking this object, you're animating it in real time, and you're just seeing all these imperfections, but it's just very real and tactile, because everything is handmade. It's just, I just love puppetry. Which is why I love the Don't Hug Me I'm Scared series as well, because it uses a lot of puppetry. And I love animatronics as well, which is why one of my favorite parts of Solo, a Star Wars story, despite what you think of the film, the animatronics in that film is absolutely astounding. You have this alien sitting next to Han Solo during the card game. It has 6 eyes, and the fluidity of the movements of those eyes on the stalks is just... Stefan, when I first showed him, he was like, oh, is that CG? No, it's animatronics, and he was super surprised.
Yeah, whenever you say something's animatronics, it always startles you because you think, how can that actually exist? How can that be real?
It's a shame. Yeah, it's a shame that we live in a filmmaking era when kind of
you just assume
you just assume
CG.
there's no magic in it anymore. We just assume it's computers.
Whereas, I guess, especially for you, puppetry is part of that magic.
Yeah, it's just the idea of bringing something that shouldn't be alive.
And also, you got to think that, there's probably someone with their hand back there making that move and how that works.
Okay, that's enough about puppetry.
Alright, is
that
it?
No, there's a lot more.
Oh, what?
That's why I wanted to hurry up.
Oh, no!
A lot more. Okay, there was a video game trailer for Death Stranding.
Video games aren't animation!
Yes, it is. It's literally animation that you control.
Look, this is the
Puppetry is an animation. We're just...
This is the guy who directed Metal Gear Solid, right?
Yeah, most of the games, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, there's a fun thing I learned about him from my friend. He basically told me he has this ingoing joke that in every game he has one of the characters shit their pants. And that has immediately made me think, I'm never going to play any of these games.
Is that true?
Yes,
I don't know.
He has this weird joke where that's just a thing.
This game looks really interesting, and from an animation perspective, with how they did.
It's all mocap. It's always mocap.
Doesn't it have the guy who... It has the guy from
The
Norman
Walking
Reedus
Dead.
in it.
Yeah, I don't care.
It looks interesting. Is
That
what I'm
guy
saying.
looks like that guy has such a distinctive face. It's always distracting when I see him like animated or drawn. It just looks
yeah.
like the guy. I hate when they put actors in video games and they make them look like the actors.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
It's
agree
so
with you with that.
distracting.
Yeah, they should get them to look like completely different actors.
Well, with the Uncharted series, they make them look different.
Oh yeah, but Uncharted is perfect.
This game could be perfect.
No.
Okay. There was a trailer for Final Space Season 2.
That looked really fun. I have
Yeah.
not seen Season 1 at all, but that looks so
I
fun.
have seen all of Season 1, but watching it while I worked on other things.
So you
I
didn't really get
I
the full
literally
impact.
remember nothing about it, other than they keep mentioning cookies.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's it.
Look, it looks
Also-
like a fun Guardians of the Galaxy style space show.
Also, that protagonist voice is so funny to me. Like, that's the creator of the show, I think, as well.
Olin Rogers.
His delivery for everything is hysterical, I think. I think it's
Why do you
very
think
funny.
so?
I just think it's funny. I think his voice is funny.
But
Okay.
I recommend watching the first season before the second season comes out, if I were you.
Like, he has such this inflated sense of self-importance whenever
Yeah.
he talks.
But then again, he actually does become that figure, though. He becomes one of the most important people in that fight against David Tennant as a raisin.
That's David Tennant?
Yes.
Ah,
David Tennant's the best.
he's great. Anyway, next one.
Okay, one more thing.
That was it? You said way more things.
I know.
This is 3 things.
But this thing is going to be, might be a bit long. So, they released the date of Minions Rise of Gru.
Good night, everybody.
So they're making a second Minions film, which I had releasing a second Minions trailer, film that I had no idea was in production, and they're releasing it next year.
Ben, we've already done the ending theme.
No.
You're talking past the end of the episode.
I just want to mention this. So someone already put a summary onto IMDb, but I'm pretty sure it's not real. I just want to read it to you. When Stuart, Kevin, and Bob can't get their bananas at the supermarket, they go and complain to the White House. When they go to complain, they get kicked out, so the minions try to overthrow the US government. Meanwhile, young Gru gets into wacky hijinks whilst getting the minions to do everything for him. When Gru gets shunned by the town, he freezes them all to death. In the end, young Gru learns nothing, and the minions get their bananas. That's the summary on IMDb
That's not even
at
a
the
summary.
moment.
That's the entire film, and that's probably not even it.
Was that, like, written by, like, a disgruntled ex-employee or something?
It looks like it. I just hope it's actually somewhat similar to that. But it looks like someone just wrote it and decided, you know what? This film doesn't deserve to be made. Let's just make a stupid summary.
I don't understand why this film needs to exist.
It's because the previous one is the third highest grossing animated film of all time.
Which one? The third film?
No, Minions.
So this is more like a Minions 2.
Yeah, that's what I said. Minions
I
Rise
thought
of
it
Gru.
was. I thought it was Despicable Me, like 1
No.
point something.
So this is a
Wasn't there
sequel
already a
to
Minions
Minions,
2?
which is also a prequel to Despicable Me.
I don't know. That sucks.
I know. I can't believe they're going.
The thing about this studio is I love the animation. Like the Minions and who does this? It's Blue Sky, isn't it?
Illumination.
Illumination. Sorry.
The black sheep.
The animation, their animation is always so bubbly. It's always so fun, but I just don't like the Minions. They're just
No.
not fun.
They're
They're
annoying.
overplayed.
I am baffled that Secret Lights of Pets film made like $100 billion or whatever. I remember looking at the trailer like a couple of years ago. It looks like a fake trailer, like making fun of like children's films with no substance. How did it make so much? Why was the trailer watched like 150 million times? It's so uninteresting. Why that film?
Do you know the second
Why?
film?
It's upsetting.
Do you know the second one, which is out at the moment, I think? It has Harrison Ford in it.
Oh.
They got Harrison Ford to
Harrison-
play a dog. That just sounds like Harrison Ford being uninterested.
Harrison Ford hasn't sounded interested in his life.
And I believe that is all we are going to talk about.
That's it. We just cut it there?
So yeah, thanks for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe to any of the places where we are, which we are at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and the podcast hosting site, Wooshka.
Thank you, Wooshka.
Give us money.
So you somehow, for some reason, against all better judgment, accepted our application.
I mean, we were waiting for a week. We were really tense for a bit there.
Yeah. So it's all those death threats we sent.
So yeah, if you're listening, make sure to listen next week where we'll be talking about Toy Story because
the first
4's,
one?
yes, because the Toy Story 4 is about to come out in a couple of weeks.
It is, yeah.
So yeah, and if you have any suggestions for what you want us to do, just make sure to comment below or even get us criticism as long as Michael doesn't read it, as we said last week.
Or just Mel, you tell us something to watch.
Yeah. And as always, wait a minute. Is that Lois here? We need to save Lois! We have to go! Bye!
Back
We
to
have
the
to save Lois!
What?
Bye!
I didn't agree to this.